Senator, the president is calling this the American Jobs Act, but it quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck. It seems to remind a lot of other people, like the stimulus bill. What are your thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen the actual text, but I did listen very carefully to the president's words and note that he did not use the word stimulus once. I think that's a good thing, because if he had, I think it would have been doomed from the get-go. Think about where the stimulus got us. The stimulus bill promised that we would, if we passed this package, we would keep unemployment below 8%. We have been at over 9% unemployment for months now, the longest, highest period of unemployment since World War II. We have lost over 1 million jobs since the stimulus was passed, and we've added over $4 trillion in debt and spending since that time. The president was wise not to call this a stimulus. But think about the proposals that he has placed within his Jobs Act. And again, I guess we'll see the text of this next week. He urges us to advance a transportation piece, to move out on transportation infrastructure. I agree. We've been working to build out a new highway reauthorization plan. In fact, there's probably going to be a short-term extension of the expiring provisions coming up in the next couple of weeks. But we are working to build out a long-term plan that will provide for just those kinds of good-paying construction jobs that will not only help with the jobs, but will give us lasting infrastructure, which is what this country needs. So that's something that we have been working on, we will continue to work on, and we will complete. President also mentions that we need to move forward with free trade. Couldn't agree more. We have a free trade agreement that has been pending with South Korea that's of particular interest to us in Alaska because of our very strong trading relationship. We'd like to get that measure through. The biggest problem is that the president has failed to send up the 3 free trade agreements so that we in the Senate can consider them. So, Mr. President, if you're going to say act on the free trade agreements, set it up so that we can. He also mentioned that we need to work to reduce the regulatory burden on our small businesses and our industries so that jobs can be created. I agree. But again, Mr. President, you have said that you've got this executive order in place. Since that executive order was put in place, there has been one regulatory rule that has been repealed. How many during that time period have been put in place? Over 400. So again, it's easy to say in a speech that we should be doing this, but you've got to match those words with actions, and we just haven't seen that. Now, there are other portions of the speech that I think are worthy of consideration. He mentions a payroll tax holiday. That's something that we will be considering because the provision does expire here towards the end of the year. But one of the tax pieces that he mentions is a provision that would allow for a tax credit for workers or for employers to hire new workers. I don't think that's so much the problem. If you're a restaurant in Kenai, you're not going to hire a new wait staff, a new cook to come in just because there's been a tax credit made available to your small business, unless you believe that you're going to have enough customers coming through the front door to merit that extra waiter or that extra cook. So we need to make sure that we are instilling in our economy the confidence that these small business, these job creators need, rather than putting in place kind of an extension of that safety net, which, granted, is extraordinarily important during these difficult times. But let's be critically looking at this. If this is a jobs creation package, let's make sure that we are actually creating the jobs. Let's make sure that we are putting the incentives in place that will actually work to build jobs for the long term, whether it's in Alaska or in the rest of the country.
The second question is two parts, actually. When we went to bed last night, this was going to be $300 billion. We woke up today, it was $400 billion. By the time he was done today, it was about $475 billion. How troubled are you at where that money's coming from? And secondly, he kept saying, you gotta pass this bill, you gotta pass this bill. Shouldn't you just leave the car selling to Cal Worthington?
Well, I tell you, I listened to the first half of the speech, and I kept kind of hearing this refrain in the back. It sounded like he was trying to sell something to people that were skeptical, yes, but also a lot of dessert here without telling you how you're going to make this all happen. It wasn't more than a few months ago when the president reminded us that we had to eat our peas. Today, there were sure a lot of promises about how we're going to make this happen, and you're not going to have to pay for it. He said, this is all going to be paid for. So I was waiting to find out, good, how are we going to pay for it? Because there's a lot of good promises in here, whether it's to our veterans or whether it's to those who have been unemployed for long periods of time, those with disabilities. I mean, all good areas that we want to be focusing on. But how are we going to pay for this, Mr. President? And best I could tell, his proposal is the same old, same old. We take away the subsidies from the oil and gas industry, so again, we pick on one industry, and then we move to tax the super wealthy. Well, when you are sitting here, $14 trillion in the hole, you're not going to be able to tax your way out of this. You're not going to be able to pull away enough subsidies from any industry in order to make up that difference. And so I think it's important that when you make promises that we can have all this, we can have all these tax credits, we can extend these benefits, we can make these offerings, we can pay for a highway program, we can pave the way, and yet not have a realistic way to pay for it. I think that remains a problem. That remains a big problem.
And lastly, you've referred to stimulus bills, which this sounds like as a sugar high, which might get your employment numbers up and make you feel good for a little bit, but then you crash right back down again. Was there anything tonight that led you to believe that this is long-lasting career help from the president, rather than just something to get him through next November?
I didn't see that any new dirt was turned in terms of the proposals that the president laid out that would allow us to be on a sustainable path to economic recovery and sustained job creation. Infrastructure, construction jobs, these are good, these are important, these are absolutely necessary. But are they the long-term building blocks? Have we given the confidence to the American public that we need? Have we given the confidence to the small businessman that he or she needs to grow and expand their business, to allow for those jobs to be created, those opportunities to be created? I don't think we saw the long-term vision here. What we saw was a short-term kind of plug, if you will. Call it the sugar high that gets you going in the short term. But I didn't hear what I was hoping for in terms of a long-term vision as to how to get this nation back on the path of economic stability and prosperity.